Good evening. This is Jim LaFawn, Chairman of the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee. This is the July 21st, 2020 meeting of that committee, and it is 5 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee shall be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirements to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandovermass.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26. Actually, I think that is Comcast Channel 99. I'm not sure what the Verizon channel is. At www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings, please email your question, comment prior to or during the meeting to ashapiro@northandoverma.gov. Again, that's ASHAPIRO at northandoverma.gov. The question/comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. Could everybody hear that?
Yes.
All right, great. The meeting then is hereby called to order, and the first item on the agenda is to call the roll. Since this is not audio, people should please respond with a voice confirmation. Kevin Driscoll? All right. CJ Ganji?
Here.
Jen Luz?
Here.
Jack Maben? Joe Pellich?
Here.
Kathleen Stagno?
Here.
And Jim LaFawn present as well. So we do have a quorum with 5 members present. So I guess we should roll into the agenda. The second item on the agenda is the selection of volunteer recording secretary. Do I have a volunteer? All right. With that said, Andrew, is there any way for me to get a copy of this recording afterwards? I can do the minutes.
Sure. Basically, this is actually going to be up on YouTube or the North Andover Cam YouTube channel. And once it becomes available, I will send you the link. And I appreciate you doing that, Jim, because actually, and we'll discuss, we can discuss this, but I'm going to be drafting minutes for the March 9th meeting, which were never generated. And that was our last meeting before COVID-19, oversight on my part. So I, rather than doing 2 sets of minutes, I appreciate you doing the minutes for this meeting.
Yeah, no problem. So noted. So Jim LaFawn will take care of the recording secretary position for this meeting. Next item on the agenda is the actual acceptance of the minutes from the June 30th meeting. I'll need a motion when people are ready.
So moved. Acceptance. Motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Okay. Motion by Joe Pellich. Is there a second?
This is Jen Luz. I second.
All right. A second by Jen Luz. Is there any discussion, or do people need a few minutes to look at the minutes? All right, with no comment being made, I'd like to move the motion. All those who are in favor of accepting the minutes from the June 30th, 2020 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I've got to do this by roll call again.
Yes.
CJ Ganji,
Aye.
Jen Luz,
Aye.
Joe Pelich,
Aye.
Kathleen Stagno,
Aye.
and Jim LaFawn votes aye as well. Motion carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the discussion regarding the flash vote survey results and any potential next steps with respect to public outreach. I guess at this point in time, I'd like to, Andrew, if you have anything to mention at this point in time about compilation of the results, you can start it off, unless there's a member who would like to start it.
I'm happy to start it. I'll keep it short and sweet. I will just say that, from my vantage point, as far as, the sort of the operational emanation of the survey, I thought it went very well. And I judged that by the number of participants we got, 674, which I thought was, fairly robust, especially given, we're in the middle of summer right now. And I do think that, it generated some conversation throughout the town. I thought that the yielded a lot of good information from my viewpoint as far as the comments that were made in sort of the short answer form. A lot of variety of different comments, some fairly constructive in my opinion, and resentment of the conversations that have been had over the past few months with this committee. And I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions, but my own observations would say that people felt that obviously they were very much in agreement with not selling the property or the estate itself. That the town should consider a lease management agreement with a third party that was voted on with 57.5% of respondents. That the buildings and grounds, trails surrounding the building should be preserved and used for the public. I think it kind of gets us to our ultimate conclusion that it seems like we've been moving toward is to not sell the estate, have the town maintain control, but have a third party assume some level of management or operational control. And I'd be happy to hear everybody else's thoughts or other things they want to discuss in regards to the survey.
Comments?
This is Jen Laws. I do see you have one comment that's a little bit different than what Andrew said. I just note that I observed in the responses, both the free-form answers and the percentages, the sort of specific check the box results, that in my impression, there was a reluctance for the town to invest its own funds to support the estate. And we know that it has not operated that way traditionally. It's always been an enterprise fund. I know there was some concern that people may have found that a little bit confusing. I think that's sort of related to the nature of enterprise funds not being well understood generally. But I will say that I think it's important for us from a financial perspective when we think about the economics of the estate to recognize that this may not be an economic priority for the town's citizens, especially in light of all the information we have about the significant costs that it's going to take to get the estate sort of preserved and functioning at a high level, sort of all of the work that needs to be done. I think we saw numbers that were in the $10 million range plus. So I thought that was an important piece to draw out as we consider those results.
All right, others?
I think these results kind of cement what we saw at the town meeting. So I think the two being in line, I think this is good information to go forward.
I think to take what Jen survey, that there's some urgency in a sense, because the town isn't committed to putting a lot of additional capital into this. We have an enterprise fund that's rapidly being depleted, and that perhaps as a town, we should become very focused on this, and although thorough, and focus on kind of a strategy to move this forward.
All right, others? I guess one of my personal feelings is I'm not really sure. I came to the same conclusion as Jen and others about the town not wanting to support it. It looks to me that for that question, the town should not expend any of its, money in operating expenses. It was, am I 16%? Am I reading that wrong? Versus the town should dedicate funds, look to be about twice that, 31%. Am I interpreting that wrong?
Jim, this is Andrew. So this is what I have. The town should not expend any of its operating budget on the maintenance and operation of the estate. 17% said that. So you're right. There's not a majority that said definitely not do that. The town should dedicate funds on an indefinite basis to sustain the operations of the property. There was also not a resounding, in any way, shape, or form, support for that. 31.8%. So, but I think I don't want to speak for Jen. It sounds like
Yeah.
I agree with what she was saying in the sense that no one's saying they definitively want the town to spend money going forward on an indefinite basis. And the reason that question was put in there was sort of because of the situation that we're in right now, which is we do, to Joe's point, have an enterprise fund retained earnings balance that's going down. And if we came to a point where the state wouldn't certify the enterprise fund, a decision would have to be made as to whether what's the next step. If it wasn't going to be a third-party management scenario, then the town would have to consider either shuttering the facility indefinitely or having approval to absorb it into its operating budget. And so it doesn't sound like from the survey results the town would be supportive of that. I mean, it seems like only 31.8% would say definitively if that happened that would be the case, unless I'm reading that wrong. But that's the way I interpret it.
Right.
Andrew, I would chime in that that's how I was reading the survey as well, is that there is not, the majority of people did not support, that 31.8 is exactly what I was looking at and had in mind as I was saying that. And I'd also say that as the finance committee representative on this committee, I do think that there is significant urgency around the finances of the estate. The fact that the retained earnings are dwindling and there's no end in sight right now to the COVID closure of the estate and its own sole revenue generating opportunities, I think that this really is at an inflection point. And I know I said this the last meeting, but I really would urge us to sort of come to a conclusion soon, because I think that it is at a pressing point. I'd also say that in terms of the financial support, one thing we haven't really talked about on this committee, but that I have spent a lot of time on, is the fact that there was significant concern in town about the budget for the upcoming year. And a lot of time and effort was put into coming up with a memorandum of agreement to sort of put a backstop against the operating budget of the town in case revenues didn't come in because of COVID. And so where we are already as a town in a position where we're not sure if we're going to be able to really meet the budget that we have set for the year, and that there's already this fail stop in place for the operating budget, that to me is even more of a reason why we should, take very seriously the concern of our citizens to spend town operating funds on this enterprise fund or any enterprise fund.
All right.
Can I just make one more comment, and this is in response to some public information that we received in terms of, there's out there that the survey was somehow misleading in saying that the town already expended its operating budget on the estate. And I just want to say, nowhere is it described in this survey that we're. say initially that that the Stevens Estate at Osgood Hills, a 153 acre property, historic mansion, owned and managed by the town of North Andover. Town currently keeps the Stevens Estate open to the public, and property hosts a variety of public and private events. Nowhere in there does it say explicitly that it's run through an enterprise fund, but it doesn't say that town operating funds are used. And the choice for saying in the the third question, whether or not town should use its operating budget, again, is supposed to be hypothetical in nature. If in fact we got to a point where we had to make a decision because of the level of funds left in the enterprise fund, if we had to either shutter it or absorb it as part of town operating. So I just want to throw that out on record that I don't believe that we were missing in our budget.
If anything, Andrew, it's showing, I mean, the responses are showing how familiar people are with the property in town. So I agree.
And I guess, sorry, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but one other thing I'd quickly say, just to be on record with it, is that there are people that we didn't draft the survey, and the town did it, and without this committee's consent. And that's something I heard. I don't know if that really was prominent voice out there, but you guys know very well that you did draft the survey over several meetings. In fact, Kathleen had kicked it off with drafting initial questions. Flash Vote did work with us, and in fact, we did vote to issue the survey in its final form on March 9th, and that is the meeting for which we still don't have meeting minutes. So I will make sure that we get those memorialized, but I have the recording to prove that. So want to make everyone aware that we did go through a public process, and you guys know that, but I wanted to go on record so folks at home know that as well.
All right.
Hey, everyone. It's Kevin. I just want to let you know I'm on the call.
Great, Kevin. Yeah, I'd like the record to show that Kevin Driscoll is now in the meeting. The time is 5:20 p.m. Kevin, any comments?
Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, no problem. But any comments? We're discussing the results of the survey at this time.
No, I'll listen in for a few minutes. I just jumped in.
Okay. All right. Well, the question then, the $1 million question is, where do we go from here? With potential steps, next steps to public outreach, if we feel that's necessary. We can vote if necessary on a potential public outreach action, a forum, a focus group, etc. Or we can take any other action that the committee sees fit. So do I have any?
Jim, if it's okay, I would like to make a couple motions.
Well, let's start with one. Yeah.
Okay, so
we got to kind of, well, we can take them one at a time.
okay.
If there's a second, we can, well, let's have discussion, and then if need be, we can table that first motion and take a second one. But let's start with your first motion.
Sure. And generally they should flow into each other. So hopefully this makes sense to the committee. So this motion comes about based a lot on what we've talked about the survey, about what we've just discussed. And my first motion would be, at this time, I move to discontinue deliberations and continue forward towards writing a recommendation. The committee has developed a general framework of what a recommendation to the select board would include. The recommendation would engage a nonprofit organization whose mission and purpose is aligned with the town's intentions for the property, including the following: the town of North Andover retains ownership, preservation of open space, protection of our watershed, maintenance of trails, public access, and other passive recreational opportunities, preservation of historic buildings and structures. This is very important to emphasize this piece. A special focus and emphasis on educational programs for the North Andover school-age children, as well as programs for all residents. Such organizations shall have a proven track record of stewardship, public engagement, educational offerings, and strong financial wherewithal. Such agreement can take the form of a lease, a management agreement, or other similar structure as is common for typical nonprofit organizations. That's my first motion. happy
All
to
right. So there is a motion on the floor. Before any discussion, it's proper to second that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion on the floor is by Joe Pelich and a second is by CJ Ganji. All right, I'll open it up to discussion.
Can I just ask if, Kevin, do you mind putting yourself on mute when you're not speaking? I apologize, because I think we're getting some feedback from your phone.
It was on mute, so I don't know if it was my phone.
All right, again, discussion. That's obviously quite a motion, Joe. It's pretty specific.
Did we get a second? I'm sorry.
No, we don't, I don't think.
CJ gave us a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry, yes, CJ Ganji did second it, yep. So is there any comment? Basically, I think in a nutshell, Joe, what you're doing is you're precluding an RFP which would go out, which would entertain private enterprises. This again seems like it's pretty specifically a nonprofit, whether it's an existing one or whether it's a newly formed one. Is that correct?
I think based on the last many months, I think that's where this committee generally has ended up. I think we've explored very broadly different operating models. I think we've met our requirements, and my simple thought process is that we've collected enough information, data. We pulled the public. We have, I think, personally, I believe, an urgency here because of the current economic environment. We have an urgency because of the current situation with retained earnings. And I think that we, as an advisory committee, have done our due diligence and duty and can now take that information. And I think I've outlined it pretty specifically. And all essentially I'm asking for is that we discontinue deliberation and looking at other models and so on, and now focus on what we as a group have come up with and put that into a recommendation. And there'll be more. I have additional motions that will be even more specific. So that's my first motion.
Jim, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
My question would be, Joe, in your motion, you said, to issue this RFP and engage the third party through either a management agreement or long-term lease. So I know we're having a discussion later, or potentially having a discussion later on this agenda about the town manager's communication to you about a management agreement. So my question is, if you're ceasing all deliberations, are you saying you don't want to explore or distill your recommendation to recommend either a management agreement or long-term lease? You don't want to define which one you'd rather be pursued. You just want to put it to the Board of Selectmen to decide how they want to proceed in that manner?
I think it's self-evident in my language. I'll reread that sentence. It says, such agreement could take the form of a lease, a management agreement, or other similar structure as is common for typical nonprofit organizations. And I think your question will be further answered, Andrew, with my second motion. So my second motion, generally speaking, is that we vote on the first, we establish parameters, we agree to move this forward to a writing. The second one essentially is that anything that goes before any recommendation that we send forward to the selectmen then have to get approved at town meeting. So I think that would tie out kind of what we're talking about in your logic. But
I'm going to agree with you, Joe. I'm
sorry.
certainly ready to. I'm certainly ready to move forward. I think I'm proud of the work that we've done here. I think some of our minds were changed given the information that we acquired along the way, and even towards the end of our in-person meetings, we started to recycle conversations a bit. So I know my mind was changed from the beginning, and I know we all care about the estate quite a bit, and we've done a lot of work and research. and used our expertise. Every person on this committee has a different area of expertise. So I'll agree with you. I think I'm ready to move forward as well.
This is Jim. I just like to put in my 2 cents worth. So we have on the agenda, tonight's agenda, item 5, which is Kevin reporting back regarding his conversations with Elegant Banquets and my conversation with Sean Adams at Pierce Farm on Witch Hill. Those are both private organizations. So if I understand it correctly, your motion, if passed, would preclude us from really having discussion under or reporting under 5. I mean, we could report, but there'd be no deliberation about potentially bringing in a private enterprise. We would only potentially come up with our model from either the present model or some type of hybrid of that model, the nonprofit model that we've discussed, or some hybrid of that,
So, Jim,
or a
I'd be-
management agreement. Is that correct?
I'd be more than happy to amend it slightly. In essence, we discontinue deliberations at the adjournment of this meeting. Perhaps that's one way to resolve that. And then also I'd offer that my memory and understanding is that although it was great of Kevin to go back to Eloquent Banquets, I'm not sure what happened. We did take a vote as a board. It wasn't a straw poll. It was a vote that we would not re-engage Eloquent Banquets. So I had asked Andrew to look at the minutes. I think it's the night that's not drafted yet, right?
So I don't think so. So and apologies, Joe. I may have not. I didn't go through every set of minutes of the fine tooth comb, but I did look at every set. I couldn't find the portion, and some of our minutes are several pages long, but I couldn't find the specific area you were talking about. I don't know that it was the night that I don't have minutes for. That would have been March 9th, because I don't think you were at that meeting, Joe, as far as I recall. However, here's what I do remember. I think there was a vote at some point in time, or a discussion at least, or an agreement by the board at some period of time to not invite Elegant Banquets in to discuss or have the same conversation with you that you had with the board of trustees, or with the trustees of the reservation, excuse me. Now, I don't know that that would have precluded you from doing what Kevin did, which is independently himself going back and seeking out information from them, not outside of the realm of a public meeting like you did with the trustees. So that's where the distinction is. But I understand what you're saying, Joe.
And I understand that. I think to Jim's point, if I just slightly change that language, I think we get to what he's looking for. Am I right, Jim?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm interested if the board at large wants to hear what Kevin and I have to report, fine. If you don't, I mean, that's, we're big boys. We can understand that as well. So, yeah, I want to know if people want to hear it or not.
Perhaps we take a vote on this motion, and then if it doesn't stand, I'll make a second motion with a slight change in wording.
Let me just, can I interject with one? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry. So my recollection of the straw poll was the only straw poll that we've taken was about lease, sell, or have the town keep it. And I think the agreement in the first meeting was that we would not discuss selling the property, that everyone around the table agreed that that would not be something that we would move forward with in discussion. Like Jim said, it's up to the committee to determine whether or not you want feedback on the private vendors. I don't think that Jim and I would have done our conversations with those folks if we weren't interested. I wasn't pro forma. I was trying to get some solid information to bring back to the group. So I'm a little. I feel like we're getting a little bit cut off at the knees right at the onset of a meeting where I already was feeling like the town manager was not doing an end run, but was certainly coming in the 11th hour with her own recommendation. So I'm I will not support the motion as it is right now because I think that we are mainly on the same page, but we're not. I don't think we're at the point where we can recommend to the Board of Selectmen based on Melissa's letter and the fact that we've had so many months of missed meetings.
This is I would say that I support the motion as amended. I think that I do want to hear what Jim and Kevin have to say, and I think maybe if we can sort of, I don't know if it's possible procedurally to jump to short summaries of those conversations. I know that after many months of hearing how private operators work or how other towns run these facilities and hearing firsthand from Joanna the roadblocks, the very significant roadblocks that she has of running this estate as a, as an arm of the government, I'm have a pretty solid sense of where I'm going to end up. I think it is very important, again, from a financial standpoint, that at the end of this meeting, we vote on a recommendation. I think it's time. I don't know that there is much more additional information we can gather that's going to be informative. We've spent many months on this. Yes, we took a break, but I think that it's hard to imagine that there is a lot of additional information out there that we've missed given our very robust process. So I don't know if it is procedurally okay to jump to those updates and then, move to a vote, but that would be my recommendation.
I can withdraw my motion for now. Jim, is
Well, I think, again, I'm not a pro on Robert's Rules of Orders, but I think if we all agree, we could table the motion and come back to it, after Kevin and I give a report. And with that information, if people's minds were changed, they could vote accordingly. Anybody have any issues with tabling the motion?
No, I think that's fine. My question is, does the motion as it stands, with Melissa's letter, I'm not sure that the motion as it stands fits into that part of the process either. So
I think that the town manager's letter, this is my opinion, I did look at it from that perspective, is recommending a management contract. It doesn't specify whether that management contract would be with a nonprofit or not. So I think that Joe's motion would probably preclude entering into a management agreement with a for-profit organization, but not from entering into a management agreement with a nonprofit. So her letter may still be viable in some way, shape, or form. As far as reports from Kevin and I assume that it would be just for reporting purposes, that if we voted on the motion, it would preclude either, Pierce Farm or Elegant Banquets from, submitting an RFP because they're both for profit. But there is one thing that someone did mention to me is that, it's always possible for someone to, to form a nonprofit for this particular purpose. We're looking at nonprofits as a trustees of reservations or a Mass Audubon or someone of that ilk. But I suppose it's possible that, a fictional organization calling themselves the Friends of the Stevens Estate at Osgood Hill could, being a nonprofit, could submit an RFP. So it doesn't have to be an old and staid, in my opinion, based on the wording. It would just have to be any nonprofit.
I just want to jump in. This is Jen Laws again. Jim, you said something that a few times there that I don't think is true. You said the word preclude. I don't think that anything we do here is binding on anyone. I think we are making a recommendation for the Board of Selectmen to consider. And I think that's really important as we discuss the letter from Melissa and the information that you and Kevin are bringing. My understanding is that while our advice and input will be well received and taken as an independent committee that did a lot of diligence to look into this issue, but it's certainly not binding on anyone.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that our recommendation is going to be followed, but I don't think that anything we do actually precludes anything, which is why, to some extent, why I think it's really important that we make a recommendation tonight. Like, we have the opportunity, we've done so much work and we have a clear indication from the town manager that she is ready to move and do something significant on this. Whatever the motivation is, that was very unclear from the letter. I also share some of the concerns briefly raised about that letter, but I think that, you know, at least from where I sit, there is a financial need for the estate to come out of this state of limbo. We've done a lot of work. We have valuable input to give. We should be giving it.
Understood. And just to make it clear, Jen, I agree that nothing that we do precludes anything. But other than what we vote on precludes us from making a recommendation to include for-profit organizations. So that's all. Our recommendation could not be to do that after this vote, if it's voted affirmatively.
Correct. That's my understanding.
All right. So again, any objections to tabling the motion? Or is there a voice that people want to just vote on the motion now? All right, not hearing a whole lot, then let's move into.
Wait, Jim, why don't we do this? Can someone, just to make it clear, can someone just make a motion? Can you request that someone makes a motion to table the
Sure.
the motion for now?
I'd like to, sure. Could I have a motion, please, to table the motion made by Joe Pellich?
I'll make a motion to table my motion.
All right. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Joe Pellich, seconded by Kevin Driscoll. We're going to have to do a roll call. So let me get my roll call sheet out here. Kevin Driscoll,
Yes.
TJ Ganji,
Yes.
Jen Luz,
Yes.
Joe Pellich,
Yes.
Kathleen Stagno,
Yes.
and Jim LaFawn votes yes as well. So the vote is 6-0 in favor of temporarily tabling the motion. All right, so we'll move on to item number 5 in the agenda, which is discussion regarding interviews and discussion with stakeholders or other venues. Kevin, why don't you report back to us on your discussion with Elegant Banquets?
So I had a conversation lasted about an hour with John Royce and I forget
Rich Correa.
Rich Correa, both on the same call together. You know, they're still interested in pursuing, if there's an RFP, the option, although they're you know, based on the discussions that we've been having, based on the parameters that they want to set, I think it's sort of a non-go from our standpoint, in that they absolutely cannot take on the estate without improving the estate by adding a rather significant 10,000 square foot addition to the estate. Much like they did in their initial proposal, you know, they admitted that initial design was flawed and rushed, and they're more than willing to work with the town and historical architecture firms to blend their addition into the estate. They want to do an awful lot to the estate. They want to flip the entrance to the original front, which is now the back, and create a driveway system and all that. Willing to do, you know, all of the work and the cost, and looking at a long-term lease, not looking to buy the property. We're open to use of the carriage house. They would like to renovate that space as a smaller venue, in addition to the estate main building itself, and they'd be open to town use for that facility, as well as creating a museum for the town in the upper floors of the main building. But you know, from what I've heard in our discussions, and what I've heard in conversations with, people around town is the integrity of the state is what people are looking to maintain. And Elegant Banquets would definitely be looking to sort of recreate a facility up on top of that hill.
What was the square footage, Kevin, that they want to add on?
So they are looking at a 10,000 square foot addition, which would include a ballroom, a new service kitchen, new handicapped bathrooms, and a sort of an entry portal from. So they're looking to reconfigure the estate itself. So the back side of the estate currently, where the tent would go, would become the front door, and they would recreate that as the entrance. And the addition would go where they would tear down the current Boston University addition, and and from that point extend back toward the carriage house, the 10,000 square foot addition, again to try and blend in as much as possible with the historic architecture of the estate. But when I asked them about size, if they were locked into 10,000 square feet, it was a non-negotiable yes.
Yeah, the problem with an addition of that size would be it would overwhelm the original house, which is what I was told by Mass Historic. So I don't think an addition.
Other comments?
How many occupants can 10,000 square feet hold? What's the maximum?
They'd be looking at a ballroom that could seat 300 people.
Boy, that's an awful lot of traffic, and I'd want to consider the neighbors that live around there too, to be considerate of them.
But again, you wouldn't be able to build an addition that big. According to Mass Historic, you wouldn't be able to build an addition of that size.
It also seems to sort of fly square from all of our public outreach. So I think it's interesting that we went back to them and got their perspective, but I agree with you, Kevin, that that's probably a non-starter, not a real option.
Agree.
Yeah, I was curious. I was curious to see whether they would have any flexibility to square footage and use of the space outside of their own private use. And the square footage was definitely hard fast, and the use of the space was even a little bit gray. I talked about youth services utilizing the carriage house space. I asked them about the potential for mountain biking and hiking and snowshoeing and cross country skiing and whatnot. They were not warm and fuzzy about that.
If anything, Kevin, that's really valuable information, because it for the people that there are people out there that would have said, why didn't we approach the original offer? So, it's like Jen said, it's not really in line with what our research is.
All right.
Right. I think it was a good conversation. I certainly appreciate what they're looking at from a money making, venture. And I did go through their website. The Chateau is their sort of premium, premier space down in New York in Westchester County. They invited us to come down and take a look at it. I was sort of interested in looking at it through the website, and it's very it's a large facility, but they do make a good chunk of money. So but I think it's not what the town is looking for.
Alrighty, any wrap-up comments for Kevin or questions for Kevin? All right, then if not, I'd like to move into Pierce Farm at Witch Hill. This was, just to give you a little background, this was an organization or person that contacted Rosemary Smedili, member of our select board, to basically gauge his interest and the town's interest in potentially doing something with his organization. He purchased Pierce Farm at Witch Hill, which is on Boston Road in Topsfield, about 4 years ago. And they turned it in, they are using it as a venue. And basically, prior to COVID-19, they had their last full year, they had 114 weddings or events, excuse me, mostly weddings. They have a pretty nice website. And what they're looking to do is they did buy the Pierce Farm. They are looking maybe to recreate their model and do it elsewhere, but are not interested in buying any more property. So it would be through some type of management agreement or potentially a lease to do the same thing. The owners' names are Sean Ward. His wife Candace is also the manager of the estate or the farm, and they have a son, Kyle Ward, who works. He's an event planner. They have a list of, like our Stevens Estate does, they have a list of preferred caterers and other types of vendors. So again, he was willing to, to reach out to the town and see if we'd be interested in doing anything with them, or even gauging to see if if this is something they'd like to take on. Interestingly, their motto is preservation through use. So they are not interested in taking old estates. They have an affinity for historic properties and antiquities, and their model would be to more take what is there and run with that. That said, they understand that there'd be more limitations because the wedding venue is mostly an outdoor venue, so not a lot goes on as far as weddings go at the Stevens Estate during the wintertime. So it would mostly be a 2 or 3 season type wedding facility, but possibly there are other things. He mentioned an openness to working with various town organizations such as the youth center, with the school department, et cetera, and with any other town organizations to blend in the activities that the town might like to see along with theirs. And of course, that would all be negotiated in the contract. And obviously, what would return to the town would depend upon what demands the town put on them as the manager or the lessee. In going through, we had come up with a list of questions. I think Kevin answered most of them for Elegant Banquets, but basically, yeah, they are interested in responding to an RFP if it were open to for-profit organizations. They have not conducted, a full review, obviously. So this is all just kind of off-the-cuff remarks that Sean made to me during our conversation. So anyway, that's basically it. If people have questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
Oh, I just want to make a quick comment that I'm going to drop from my computer and go on my phone. So if you see me disappear.
Gotcha. Okay. I did hear a little something going on. Wasn't sure. Thank you. Other comments?
Hey, Jim, did the folks at Pierce Farm give you any idea on how many events or how large their events would need to be for it to be a profitable venue for them? And what are they looking to bring to, in terms of renovating that space? And I know you said they haven't really done a review of it, but you were upfront with them, I assume, on the work that we've discovered needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually told Sean about, that there was quite a bit of information available on, work that would need to be done. I told him about the recent survey. I don't know whether he's had a chance to look at it, but it's there. This is jumping in at the 11th hour for them. They don't have enough information to discuss numbers. We talked about it. I said, or actually, I think Sean was the one who broached. He said, yeah, he said maybe if the town is only interested in 90 or 60 private events a year, and the rest would be town use. I think they would be amenable to that. But obviously, that cuts into the profitability and the ability for them as a private venture to do capital improvements. If we restrict them to say 60 events a year, because the town wants to use the carriage house, the town wants to have snowshoeing and hiking and public events at the estate itself, then obviously if we're going to limit the amount of rentals that they could have, that would limit their ability to put money back into the estate. But again, he indicated it's just too early. They would have to do pretty extensive review of the facility to be able to start talking numbers.
Well, Jim, what do you think? This seems comparable to others. I'm reading about Pierce Farm right now. It seems comparable to other management opportunities that we've reviewed. Do you get that? Is that what? Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I don't know their operation well enough. I mean, compared to say Mass Audubon or the trustees,
Yeah.
I don't think that they have those deep pockets. But they don't have that type. They don't have membership. They don't have donations, that type of thing.
Right.
So from that perspective, could they manage the property as well? Probably the management of it. It looks like their organization is very well run. It looks like it's very well managed. It looks like they have beautiful events. But again, I think that it's just too early. I don't have enough experience in this field to know whether if they could make a profit on 60 events, or whether it would be 90, or whether it would be 100. I just don't know, and I don't want to even go there. Again, I think they're a quality organization. The reason I followed up is that Rosemary Smedili had engaged me and told me about them. It's also, again, I'm not sure that the board has a real affinity for moving toward a private organization to manage or lease the property. But again, I think it's imperative upon us to bring in a lot of different ideas and information, and that's all I'm doing. Again, this could be something that that could crop up in the we could vote one way, but we're probably going to end up in some way, shape, or form submitting all of our research to the selectmen when we make our recommendation. As Jen alluded to earlier, nothing would preclude them from investigating that avenue a little further.
Jim?
Yes, Andrew.
I just want to make you aware there is I don't know if it's so much a question, but there's questions, comments about from a member of the public. You're not obligated to take that. I just wanted to make you aware of that, and if you want to take it, I can read it to everyone.
Is it germane to the topic right now, Andrew?
Somewhat. I don't. It kind of there's some information that is, and there's some information that isn't.
Yeah, let's take it right now.
Okay. This is from Jean Irwin. Jean Irwin, I don't have an address, but she is I can confirm she's a member of the Osgood Hill Trustees Board. She says, this is a direct conflict to majority of surveyed. Not sure what that means. Elegant Banquets is not an assured winner. It would have to be rebid, offering the same specifications to all if that were what we were going to move forward with. Again, conflicting with what constituents want. We are already pursuing catering bid. Is that acknowledged? Is there any acknowledgement of the plans that we have set forth in place and an opportunity to pursue these plans? So my quick comment on her comments are just that she's right that we would have to do a rebid, and that's exactly what Joe is trying to accomplish with his motion to go out with an RFP. And if it were broad enough to accommodate a for-profit operator, Elegant Banquets could certainly, or Pierce Farm could certainly apply or put their proposal forward if they wanted to. But she's correct that whatever we do, if we're going to suggest an RFP, it's going to have to be put out there to the public, and appropriate organizations will have to reply. She's talking about a catering bid. The under the current operating model, the estate was asked to produce an RFP to pursue a preferred caterer. So they've been working on that. So I'm disclosing that. But obviously, if your recommendation results in the town no longer operating it, we won't be pursuing that caterer, or we won't be exercising that contract. And then she's asking if there's any acknowledgement of the plans we've set forth in place and opportunity to pursue these plans. I don't know if she's referring to the plans that they themselves as a committee are trying to undertake. And all I can say in response to that is, you all are members of the public, and if you want to listen to their meetings and clue into those plans, you certainly have the ability to do that. And I mean, I think your main charge as far as public input is concerned has been, by having these public meetings, entertaining public comments as you are right now, and also doing the survey that you did, and the other public comment avenues that you've been pursuing. So I don't know if there's much to be said. So that's it.
All right, thank you. No, I think it's good that we took Jean's comments for the record. All right, any other comments or questions about the two private enterprises that were contacted by Kevin and myself? All right, well, we're at that position in the agenda. We do have a tabled motion. We can either continue with the rest of the agenda, or I think that probably there is a sentiment that we ought to move to the motion. So if there is a motion to move the motion off the table, I would entertain that.
I would make a motion to reinstate the motion.
Second?
Second.
All right. I'm going to take a roll call again to make sure that I'm doing this. Kevin?
I'm texting Jen.
Yes.
All right. CJ?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Is there a response? Jen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Yes. My
Okay.
vote's yes.
All right, so the motion is 6-0 to take our pending motion off the table. So we are back to, we have a motion made by Joe, and it's been seconded. So at this point in time, do we want more discussion, or does someone want to call the question?
I would like just a little more discussion on the amendment that Joe had proposed to not preclude for-profits. I think one of the things that we get hung up on is Elegant Banquets. And I think that they're not the only for-profit management catering venue company out there. And so if we are opting not to allow for-profits to bid simply because we're basing our experience on Elegant Banquets, I think that we need more discussion around that.
Could I take that question, Jim, or that comment?
Yeah, I think, right, it needs some clarification, because I don't think Joe's amendment, is that what you were going to address, Joe, was not about whether it's nonprofit or for-profit. The amendment was simply to not stop deliberation until the end of this meeting. Is that correct?
No, I would. So embedded in the motion is that we engage. The recommendation would would engage a nonprofit. But Kevin, I think that very broadly, and then really specifically, we set out a whole host of criteria um, that fits quite well in my mind for a nonprofit, and almost not at all for a for-profit. For instance, the town of North Andover retains ownership, preserves open space, protects our watershed, maintains trails, public access, and other passive recreational opportunities, the preservation of the historic buildings and structure. And as you, Kevin, experienced, generally speaking, anyone who comes in is going to want to renovate and expand to make it economically viable. But one of the things that I particularly have keyed in on and focused is timing, right? This has to move pretty quick because of a host of reasons. The current economic condition in the hospitality business and our kids and our schools. And I made sure that, and I emphasized this when I first made the motion, a special focus and emphasis on educational programs for North Andover school-age children, as well as programs for all residents. So my kind of broad thinking about a for-profit enterprise, they're not going to provide that kind of service. A nonprofit clearly will. We invited some folks in who discussed at length a very substantial amount of programs that they run. We're trying to save money as a town. I think we all would agree that that's been emphasized by the public, that they don't want to put a whole lot of money into this facility, but they want to try to get as much out of it as we possibly can. So maybe it would be helpful if I reread the motion. I have it reduced to writing. Would that help everyone?
Yeah,
Well,
that's fine.
can I just ask a question on that? Because so when we met with the trustees of reservations and they came in and spoke to us, there was certainly an inference, if not direct comment, about the town needing to put up a lot of money for that facility, because the trustees aren't essentially coming in and buying the property or taking on the property, and it does not have an endowment like other trustee properties. So the town would be required, my understanding, to put money up for the trustees to actually improve that facility. Is that?
That's not my understanding. And further, I'm not sure that's something that this board, we don't, we didn't talk about that. We didn't negotiate that. We didn't provide, because we don't negotiate anything. We're just making a recommendation. I think that goes to the next level, and the town issues the RFP, and whatever that ends up being, the selectmen decide, I suspect. Andrew could speak to it better than I. And whatever they put into that RFP is what the different folks who respond will respond with, whether that's capital needs or request for additional capital, or the selectmen or the purchasing agent or the town council negotiate some terms. That's beyond what this board, I think, has been brought together to talk about. Perhaps I'm wrong.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I also think that in your comments, Joe, you just said something about the cost of improvements, and I think precluding a for-profit organization, and now I'm thinking more along the lines of Pierce Farm and what they can bring to the table. A for-profit management company is, I think, going to be in a better financial position than a nonprofit that may or may not. Well, I understand what you're saying. What our responsibility is to recommend, but I also want to make sure that when we recommend something, we are not cutting options out of the equation that the selectmen can be deciding on.
Well, I think they can decide on whatever they'd like. We're just simply making the recommendation. I would love to move this forward as I wrote it, and then take a vote and see where we end up. And I mean that respectfully. But I'm not sure we could probably talk that around and around for, for the rest of the meeting.
How about you
Can I-
reread it? Can you reread it, Joe?
Sure, I'd love to.
Go ahead, Joe. Reread the motion, please.
So at this time, I move to discontinue deliberations and continue forward towards writing a recommendation. The committee has developed a general framework of what a recommendation to the select board would include. The recommendation would engage a nonprofit organization. I apologize. The recommendation would engage a nonprofit organization whose mission and purpose is aligned with the town's intention for the property, including the following. The town of North Andover retains ownership, preservation of open space, protection of our watershed, maintenance of trails, public access, and other passive recreational opportunities, the preservation of the historic buildings and structures, a special focus and emphasis on educational programs for North Andover school-aged children, as well as programs for all residents. Such organization shall have a proven track record of stewardship, public engagement, educational offerings, a strong financial wherewithal. Such agreement could take the form of a lease, management agreement, or other similar structure as is common for typical nonprofit organizations. This doesn't preclude, this is any nonprofit. And we've discussed many different ones and explored many of them.
I think the focus on mission and purpose is very important. And I think that it meshes exactly with the response we got on this survey. I don't think you're going to get that from a for-profit business. Not that that's a bad thing. Their focus is to make money. The focus we want and what the town wants is on the open space, the building, and access to the property.
Agreed. That's
Jim,
go ahead.
sorry, I hate to cut in again. I just want to make you aware there's another public comment, and with your permission, I would read it. But again, there's no obligation to take it as this is not a public hearing.
Is it germane to the discussion?
Yes, somewhat. I mean, yeah, it's from the same individual who commented before.
All right, let's take it. Yes, please.
Okay, so again, this is Jean Irwin, who is a member of the Osgood Hill Trustees Board. So she's obviously listening to your conversation. She says, a caterer is a for-profit industry. It's essentially a management company like Melissa is recommending. They manage the events, we retain ownership. All access to public trails is written into our RFP we have drafted. So again, this goes back to and I don't want to speak for Jean, but I'm just trying to provide a little additional context. They've been asked to get a preferred caterer or an exclusive caterer under a contract. So that caterer we would go out of RFP to solicit proposals for that catering company. They'd come in and they would manage events. And so there is some idea here that they could act in somewhat of the capacity that you guys are considering. So I guess it sounds like the idea here is to leave things the way they are, allow the current operating model to continue, but under this new structure where there'd be a preferred caterer in place running these events. And she also added, we wrote local neighborhood use included in our RFP, which was referred to. It will be self-sustaining, but we can also have an endowment with donations account set up. So it just sounds like there's just some comments as to whether or not, some of this that's being discussed, and you guys can agree or disagree with this, could be achieved through the current operating model. And that's what's being expressed here.
Chip, can I make a comment, please?
Go ahead, Joe.
So I think this motion and that comment are separate and distinct. My motion is a high-level motion whereby a larger entity would control. Clearly, if this is other group who would like to provide catering service, I don't want to suggest any specific nonprofit. I don't even want to give an example, but I would say most or all of the nonprofits at the high level who would control the property via a management agreement or a lease would clearly need a catering company to perform functions. And obviously, that catering company would be a for-profit company working under the umbrella of the nonprofit company. I think my motion is intended to provide the strongest financial entity that essentially covers almost everything that this board has vetted. I'm not sure I can add much to it. I would like to move the motion forward and take a vote.
Okay. Before I do call the question, are there any final comments from board members? All right, with that said, I am going to call the question. Does anybody, I think Joe reread it. Everybody clear on the motion? If not, speak up now. Okay, so again, this is a roll call vote. All those in favor will respond by saying aye. Kevin Driscoll,
Aye.
CJ Ganji,
Aye.
Jen Luz,
Aye.
Joe Pellich,
Aye.
Kathleen Stagno,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. The decision is unanimous to pursue this motion, 6-0.
If I could, Jim, if I could make a second motion, please.
You're on a roll, Joe. Go ahead.
I move that the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee shall provide a written recommendation to the Select Board regarding the preferred long-term strategic operating model of the estate by or before August 15th, 2020, or on such a date as agreed upon by a majority of this committee. I further move, included in any operating model recommendation, there shall include an additional recommendation that any decision regarding the future of the Stevens Estate reached by the Select Board, Town Manager, or otherwise be ratified by town meeting by a simple majority vote. Such town meeting may be a special town meeting for expediency or otherwise.
All right, a motion has been made by Joe Pellich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by CJ Ganji. Is there discussion or comments?
Joe, for my benefit, do you mind just repeating the last, very last third of that and starting around the point about bringing it to town meeting?
Sure. I further move that included in any operating model recommendation, there shall include an additional recommendation that any decision regarding the future of the Stevens Estate reached by the Select Board, Town Manager, or otherwise be ratified by town meeting by a simple majority vote. Such town meeting may be a special town meeting for expediency or otherwise.
So you're basically saying that that you want to have that in your report, that you want the Board of Selectmen to operate in that fashion, the Select Board operate in that fashion, to bring it to a vote at town meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Other comments? All right, with no comments being made, I assume everyone understands the motion as it was read and seconded. So we'll do a roll call once again. All those in favor will respond by saying aye. Kevin Driscoll,
Aye.
CJ Ganji, CJ,
Aye.
okay, Jen,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Kathleen,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. The motion is unanimous, 6-0. All right, Joe, any other motions?
No, I think we're good for now. At least I am.
All right. So moving back to the agenda, we are kind of getting a little bit late tonight. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but item 6, discussion regarding Board of Selectmen recommendations report progress. is your working draft, correct?
That's correct.
As the chair, I'd like to make a recommendation. What I'd like to do is, we also do have new business. We do have a letter from the town manager that maybe should be read or at least discussed. And then we need to discuss and vote on future future meeting dates, which is never easy. So what I'd like to do is to skip item 6 and move on through the rest of the agenda. And then basically, we're going to start our next meeting with the completion of the draft, or start working toward completion of the draft. I mean, is that what everybody sees as the logical next step? Or did we want to start on that draft this evening?
Well, can I make this suggestion to make it just a little more streamlined? And if you guys don't agree with this, that's fine. But I have the working draft document, which is meant to be your final, ultimately become your final report with the recommendation. So we have until the 15th to have it completed. So I can do everything I can to have essentially, and I can work with you, Jim, and even you, Joe, if you want to self-select yourselves to review initial drafts on the wording, and then we can bring a first, basically a somewhat final draft to the next meeting, and you guys can obviously make last-minute revisions, but we can hopefully have something in line to vote on by next meeting.
I would love to participate in that. I would also think it would be great if perhaps Jen would as well. She's an attorney, and I suspect would do an exceptional job. Anyone else as well?
This is Jen. I'm happy to help on that too. I'm happy to take a look at our first draft.
All right. I think we do have to be careful about the number of people collaborating because of sunshine laws. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yeah.
And if that is so, I'm happy to cede my spot. I don't have any stake on that to Jen, so that Jen and Joe could work with you on the draft.
Okay.
And if anybody else is interested as well, speak up now. But otherwise, I'd recommend that Jen, Joe, and Andrew get to work on that for our next meeting.
Great.
All right. Any other comments in regard to that? So Andrew, do you have any? What other people could do as well is the draft was included, as an attachment in the or linked. There's a link to it in the agenda, so everybody has access to that draft. Nothing precludes us from, marking that up and making our own comments without deliberating and sending them on to Andrew, Joe, or Jen for inclusion. Any other discussion? All right, so I think we've got our work cut out for us. Next item on the agenda is new business. And I think that hopefully everybody in attendance this evening, all committee members did receive an email from Andrew with an attachment, which was a letter from the town manager regarding another option, which was a management contract. Is everybody aware of that? Would anybody like me to read that letter? Or Andrew, do you recommend that I do read that letter to enter it into the record? Or
So I was going to say, if it's okay with you, because this was a late file, so to speak, I was going to offer to read, or I'm happy to have you read it, either way. And I was just going to quickly direct the public to where they can find it as well. And of course, this will be linked to in the minutes as well. So let me just start off by telling the public where they can find it. If anybody's listening, can I just do that, Jim?
absolutely.
All right. So for members of the public, northandoverma.gov is where you'd go, the homepage for the town's website. On the town's homepage, there is a link to boards and committees at the top of the page. You would scroll to under S to Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee. That would take you to the advisory committee's homepage. On there, there's a link to this on the left side. It's called Stevens Estate Documents. And then on the top of that, there's a folder called SE, as in Stevens Estate Long-Term Committee. You would click that. There's a folder above called Correspondence. All correspondence in regards to the committee is in there. The first attachment in there is TM letter to SE Long-Term Committee. And so I know that's a lot, but I can always, if anybody wants to email me, Shapiro, ASHAPIRO at northandoverma.gov, I can send them a link as well.
All right, great. Andrew, if you don't mind, I'll read the letter. That way, if you do get any inquiries about how to link, you can help people from the public get to that document.
Sure.
All right, the letter is addressed to the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee, transmitted electronically and dated July 20th, 2020. Dear members of the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee, I hope this memo finds you well. I was thrilled at the large response number for our flash vote survey, and I commend the committee for its commitment to soliciting input from the community. I enjoyed reading the survey results. It is apparent from the town meeting vote and debate, as well as the survey responses, that the Stevens Estate is a respected town asset that residents want to protect and maintain control over. Based on the results, I wanted to make the following recommendation for exploration and review to the Long-Term Advisory Committee. I would recommend that the town of North Andover issue a request for proposals for a management company to operate the estate. Please note that this differs dramatically from a lease, which was contemplated in the past. I had a similar project in my last community where the town acquired a large successful day camp. They appropriated a large sum of money to purchase the camp, but were concerned about sustaining the daily operations of the camp and the large capital needs. However, they also wanted to protect the property and land and make certain that there were still public access to the trails that they craved. The link to the contract we negotiated is here. And I'm not going to read that link, but for those of you who are interested, go to the document that Andrew is pointing you toward, and the link is at the bottom of page 1. Continuing on page 2, I would recommend that the town craft a proposal for a request for proposals that include the following elements. 1, the town retains ownership and control of the building and trails. 2, the trails remain open for town use. 3, the management company agrees to maintain the current staff for a period of at least 1 year and will not terminate such employees without just cause during that 1-year period. 4, the management company shall pay X percentage of all profits to the town, as well as a monthly fee. The determined percentage would be based on bid response and be one of the determining factors on who the, management company would be. 5, the management company will allow the town to run town events at the facility at least once a month at no cost. 6, the management company is responsible for all insurance, including property and liability. 7, the management company is responsible for all capital repairs. Capital repairs must be approved by and completed by the town. The management company shall request the capital improvement and then donate the money to the town for such improvements. 8, the management company shall be responsible for all day-to-day maintenance, as well as lawn maintenance, landscaping, snow removal, and trash removal. 9, the management company shall apply for and maintain the liquor license. 10, the contract would include termination language and other protections for the community. 11, the contract would include language that would maintain involvement from the trustees of the Stevens Estate. I truly believe that this could help the town achieve all its goals for the Stevens Estate. A contract with a management company does not require town meeting approval. It does require a competitive bidding process. More importantly, it achieves the goal of protecting the Stevens Estate for years to come. Thank you for your consideration of this recommendation. Sincerely, M.M. Rodriguez, Melissa Rodriguez, Esquire, Town Manager. Carbon copied to the Board of Selectmen. End of letter. Comments? There being no comments, I would like to move discussion on to item number 8 on the agenda, discussion and vote on future meetings. Since the deadline we've imposed upon ourselves is for August 15th, I recommend that we have our next meeting no later than 2 weeks in the future. Again, I guess I could throw out August 4th is our next meeting date. It also is a Tuesday. I recommend this, could recommend the same time as well. Comments? All right, could someone make a motion for a meeting date of August 4th at 5 p.m.?
So moved.
Moved by CJ Ganji. Any second?
Second.
Just looking at my calendar
Second
here.
by Joe Pelich. Can everybody check their calendars while we're all meeting here? Does anybody have a problem with that date?
Any chance we could do the 3rd, August 3rd? It's a Monday.
August 3rd is fine by me. Same time, Kathleen?
Yep.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with August 3rd at 5 p.m.?
Fine with me.
Works for me.
Any problems? Jen, anybody, let me just take a negative. Anybody have a problem with that date? Okay. So obviously, I think did someone have a comment? I'm sorry.
I think that's background noise on Kevin.
With that said, I'm going to take a roll. The motion has been moved. And second, well, let's clarify. The motion is moved and seconded to have a meeting on August 3rd at 5 p.m., obviously a virtual meeting. I'll take the roll. Kevin,
Yes.
CJ,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. So unanimous vote. Our next meeting will be August 3rd, Monday, August 3rd at 5 p.m. I guess that brings us to the end of our agenda. I really appreciate everybody weighing in and your attention and involvement. It's been a pleasure. So we've got a lot of work to do. Anybody have any final comments before we adjourn the meeting?
Actually, I do. Jim, I'd like to thank you for all your unbelievably hard work as usual as the chair and pushing the committee to explore everything so broadly. The level of due diligence that you had us all go out and explore all the different options. And just as usual, it's an absolute pleasure working with you.
Well, thanks, Joe. The check's in the mail. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
A quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Kathleen.
Do we need to provide a response to the town manager's letter? Or is that purely a recommendation for our final?
Can I address that, Jim?
Sure, go ahead.
No, it requires no response. I had a conversation with the town manager about it. She emphasized to me, and she made it clear that I could express to you that it was simply a recommendation or something she wanted to point out. You're not bound to anything that she is suggesting, and she's not requiring a response or anything like that. And then likewise, and it doesn't sound like this is necessary or will happen, but she did make herself available in case the committee wanted to invite her to the next meeting to discuss it. But I don't see that as necessary at this point, probably.
Okay.
Any further comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Jen to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do the roll call for the last time this evening. Kevin, motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. Are you in favor?
Aye.
TJ,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
and the chair votes affirmatively as well. The motion to adjourn is approved 6-0. Thank you again very much for your time, and good night.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Joe,
Good night, guys.
Joe,
Aye.
can you send the motion language to,
It'll-
your motion language to Jim and CC me?
Yeah, I've got that on my list of things to do, Andrew. Joe, both motions for that matter.
It'll be right over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Great. And Andrew, do we have any follow-up that we need to do with Cam to get them to?
Nope,
the
we
meeting?
can just say, Cam, we're off, so I'll,
All right,
I'm-
Cam, we're off. Thank you very much.